The Stockinette stitch is one of the most popular stitch patterns in knitting. This basic stitch forms the foundation for a huge range of other more complex stitch patterns, including cables, lace, brioche, colorwork. Once you know this stitch, you'll be good to go for a huge range of patterns. Hi, I'm Hannah from knitting.com, and today we're going to be learning how to do the stockinette stitch. Knit flat, stockinette is made by alternating rows of knits and purls. Knitting in the round, stockinette stitch is made using just knits every row. For this tutorial, you're going to need needles, yarn, and some stitches cast onto your needles. Feel free to pause the video for a bit to watch our tutorial videos on how to cast on if you need a quick refresher. If you're ready to go, let's get started. All right, so I have a swatch I've already started here. You can see it again has that garter stitch border on all sides. Those first two stitches and the last two stitches will always be knit to do that, and that's a little bit separate from this tutorial. I want to just note it while I was going. So to get started with stockinette, you will always alternate, when it's knit flat, rows of knits followed by a row of purls. And that's how you keep the purl side all on one side and the knit stitch all on one side. It makes the fabric nice and flat. Again, you can always identify a knit stitch by the little V's and the purl stitch by the little bumps. So you know which row you're supposed to be working by just looking at the fabric. All right, let's get started. I'm going to knit these first two stitches always because it's garter stitch. And now we've reached the stockinette stitch section. In order to knit, you're going to want to insert your needle up through the front, wrap your yarn around, and pull it through. And that's the simple knit stitch. If you would like a refresher on how to knit, we have another tutorial for that. In the meantime, I will just show you how to work stockinette on both sides. So in this side, it's entirely knits. Super easy, super quick. And again, you can always tell which side you're on by looking at the fabric. This side has all those little V's, which means we're on a knit side. The other side, you'll see in just a second once I turn my work, is a purl side. All right, so I've reached my end. Everything looks good. Everybody looks in order. We're gonna flip our work. So now we're working on the side. Your working yarn is always coming from the right. And again, remember, we've got that garter stitch border. So I'm gonna work 2 knit stitches just to keep that going. All right, now we've reached the stockinette section. If you were doing an entirely stockinette piece, you would just start with purl stitches instead of the 2 knit stitches I just did. All right, so when you're working a purl stitch, you wanna make sure your yarn is always in the front. And if you're ever moving your yarn back and forth between your needles from a knit stitch to a purl stitch, you wanna bring it between the 2 needles and not up and over a needle. That creates an extra stitch you don't want in your knits unless you're doing a yarn over on purpose. We have a video for that as well. All right, now that the yarn is in front, for a purl stitch, we're going to insert our working needle through the front, downward, wrap our yarn up and over counterclockwise. And don't be afraid to use your fingers to pinch or pull, keep things in place as you go so they don't drop off on accident. Pull that through and drop it off. Do it one more time, just as a refresher for purl stitches. We also have a tutorial, so up and over, pull it up and out, and there's your 2 purl stitches. We're gonna purl all the way across that row to keep the stockinette fabric going. So a purl stitch is always happening on the back side of a knit stitch. Those 2 stitches are related. It's a little hard to describe, but that's why stockinette flat is worked with a knit row and a purl row. In the round, you're only knitting because the purl row is always, oops, see, and I got to my garter stitch. Go there, do 2 knit stitches. When you're working stockinette stitch in the round, you will only be knitting because the purls always stay on the inside and the knits are always on the outside. And that's how to do stockinette flat. This is a great stitch to use for garments like sweaters, shawls, and cardigans where you need fabric that drapes and falls gracefully. There is a catch though. Stockinette, when knit flat, does have a tendency to curl at the edges. There are a few ways to prevent curling though. You can add ribbing, which is something you see often, or an I-cord edge to your project, but another easy option is to incorporate a garter stitch border like the one in the swatch I used today. We have a tutorial for Garter Stitch if you'd like to learn more about that. And that's how you knit the stockinette stitch. If you found this tutorial helpful, be sure to click the thumbs up and leave a comment down below. Subscribe to knitting.com if you'd like to stay in the loop, and check out our other social media channels. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Happy knitting.